So we had discussed till 1991. To give you a recap again, what we had covered. We had covered the period from 1947 to 1964. This is also coterminous with the previous reading that we had, which was by uh, uh, Professor Balakrishnan. So now in this particular reading, we are kind of just highlighting what had already been studied in the previous reading, that the growth rate was pretty high as compared to the previous 50 years, and the kind of industrialization was in heavy industries, and we did not focus on health and education. The approach was an investment driven, with capital intensive technologies being used. Then we went to the next phase, which was 64 to 80. 64 to 80 starts with LBS, and his major contribution was that of Green Revolution. Then comes the crisis in Congress, Indira Gandhi taking the lead and forming a splinter group of Congress called Congress I, which ultimately came to become the major group. Then there were some fiscal reforms taken by Mrs. Gandhi, but even after taking those fiscal reforms like devaluation and opening up the economy, there was no help from the Western countries. Therefore, her shift towards the Soviet bloc and her movement towards the Soviet bloc was also accompanied by the economic period of left populism, where the objective of most of the state-owned enterprises was that of welfare. So that turn of state-owned enterprises from being a profitable enterprise to a welfare being from profitable enterprise to a welfare-oriented enterprise was actually in this particular period. And this period obviously was marked by white elephants, in the sense that these huge enterprises were loss-making enterprises. There was red tapeism, there was inspector license Raj, there was inefficiencies, there were acts like MRTP and FERA that were imposed. So overall the economic environment in this period was that of constraining and regulating with a lot of controls, rather than allowing the private sector to grow. Then in 1977, because there was these external issues which led to the fact that in 1975 Indira Gandhi imposed the emergency, and the backlash to that emergency brought about a new government when elections were held in 1977. Janata Party came to power, but again it was also filled with a lot of problems, like that of inflation and the OPEC crisis of 1979. And since there were too many parties involved in this Janta group, it was an unstable group, and in 1979 this entire government fell. In 1980, in the 1980 election, again Indira Gandhi came to power with a resounding victory, and she had learned her lessons that left populism will not work. In fact, she now started a reformist agenda. However, the reforms were piecemeal and ad hoc at best. They were not big bang reforms, which were actually initiated in 1991. Now, the reform agenda which she had started was actually taken forward by Rajiv Gandhi. Now, Rajiv Gandhi also introduced certain reforms like relaxation of MRTP, relaxation of FERA. These are issues that we will also cover in a couple of readings in the first section. However, if you see in this particular period, what has happened was that the public investment was increasing. At the same point of time, the public saving was not keeping pace, and that ultimately led to the situation where you had huge investments which were being funded from the external sector. So that led to a huge current account deficit, alongside having huge fiscal deficit. So that twin deficit that we were running actually kind of exploded by the time of 1991. Whereas the growth rate in this period was 5.6%. This was an unsustainable growth rate, and led to the crisis of 1991. And overall the growth rate, if you see from 80s to 1992, was kind of more so in the period of 86 to 88, rather than being spread across the years. So this is something which is also called as fallacy of aggregation. So because in some years you have extremely high growth, and in rest of the years you have very nominal growth, what happens on the overall decadal growth is the overall average decadal growth increases, but that's not a very sustainable type of growth. So that is what is called as fallacy of aggregation. This is a term which is used by Bhagwati, Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, in another reading that we are going to study. Then coming to 1991 onwards. So 1991 onwards is also not a homogeneous period, although in economic history we can probably say that 1991 is a watershed year. However, at the same point, if you see post 1991, there are different phases, because 1991 till 1996 is one phase, 1996 to 2002 is another phase. This is also a phase of slowdown, and from 2003 onwards till 2008 is the phase of very high extreme fast growth rate. From 2008 till 2014 is a phase where you have moderation, the great moderation in the Indian economy. And from 2014 till 2019 is again a phase of resurgence, and from 2020 onwards you have the era of COVID. So while you can divide the watershed year to be 1991, both the pre 1991 and the post 1991 period are not homogeneous. You have to understand them in separate phases. Now let's focus on our period of 1991. So what had happened in 1991 was that I had covered that how after the death of Rajiv Gandhi, Congress I came to power, but this government was not in majority. It was a minority government, and it was a minority government led by Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, and abled by a very good economist, Manmohan Singh. And they introduced the reforms. Even though they did not have a majority, they were able to sustain the political pressure of opposition and introduce the economic reforms which were needed. And if you see the inheritance of this particular government, they had a 12% fiscal inflation that was running. The fiscal deficit was 3.5%. The current account deficit was 3.5% of the GDP. You did not have revenues worth 2 weeks of imports. The fiscal deficit was more than 10%. The external debt to exports ratio was 250%. So in all parameters, all economic parameters, India was not doing well, and that was the inheritance of Manmohan Singh. Now, what had happened? What were the measures that the government took? Even immediately after coming to power, we had to take a loan from IMF, and the loan from IMF. So this was not the first time that we were taking a loan. ये loan हमने पहले भी कई बार लिया था in the 80s, but because we had a crisis at our hands. So whenever IMF gives a loan to an economy which is suffering from a BOP crisis, it puts certain conditions on that economy, so that this structural aspect of the crisis is actually solved. So one of the major roles of IMF is to help economies across the world to get out of the structural balance of payment problems. Now, so what it advises is basically encapsulated in what is called as Washington Consensus. Please read about it. What is Washington Consensus? So these are a set of rules and regulations which IMF imposes when it gives a structural loan to a particular country. तो बेसिकली आपको इकोनॉमी में फिस्कल डेफिसिट कम करना है, आपको करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट कम करना है, आपको इकोनॉमी में प्राइवेटाइजेशन लानी है, आपको ग्लोबलाइजेशन लानी है, ओपनिंग अप द इकोनॉमी, योर करेंसी शुड बी मार्केट ड्रिवन. सो ये सारे जो कंसर्न्स हैं, ये सारे के सारे यहाँ पर आते हैं, वॉशिंगटन कंसेंसस में आता है. बट देयर इज़ एन एंटायर चेकलिस्ट दैट इज़ देयर. इफ़ यू गूगल इट अप, यू विल probably find it. Then so the reforms were kind of two pronged. One part is called as stabilization reforms, and the other is called structural reforms. So changing the structure, and first stabilizing the structure, stabilizing the economy, and then changing the structure of the economy. So that's why we have the stabilization and liberalization programs. So what we did was we devalued our currency, and we had a standby credit from IMF. Then after for a couple of years our growth was not good because it's kind of a shock, giving a shock to the Indian economy. But after that our economy recovered very smartly, from at least from 1993 till 1996. The economic growth was pretty good. And uh, as I told you that the this crisis was because of the fiscal deterioration that happened in the previous decade. All of this is being mentioned here, that the higher growth rate in the 80s was based on large increases in government and foreign borrowings. So basically it contained the seeds of its own destruction. So all of that we had mentioned, that I had mentioned, is mentioned. As I told you that one of the major positives of this period was the kind of leadership that Narasimha Rao provided, and he provided a lot of political cover to Manmohan Singh, because he was facing a lot of flack from left, right, and center, because the kind of reforms that we were introducing were not seen in the last 40 odd years. So when you introduce structural reforms, there will be a lot of pressure from outside, from opposition parties, especially when you are a minority government. So all of that was being politically covered by Narasimha Rao. Then after 1996, what had happened was, by 1996, the reform process had slowed down, which is also called as basically reform fatigue. Um, there was certain fatigue that was set in, and overall after the initial bump, not much had happened in the Indian economy, apart from the fact that on the external front there were issues. For example, in 1997 there was the ASEAN crisis. So and in the meanwhile there was BJP as a party was basically consolidating across the country. And 1996, it had a quite a significant presence in the parliament. Then there was some certain splinter governments that came to power after 1996. There was the Deve Gowda government that came. There was I.K. Gujral's government, and there was again a 13-day government of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So all in all, this entire period from 1996 till 1990, from 1996 till 1999, this period was an unstable period in the Indian economy, in the Indian polity, where you had a lot of unstable governments taking power. So that, and the only major event that happened in this period was the nuclear testing that happened in 1998. However, in 1999, when fresh elections were held, BJP was able to form a stable minority government, and that stable minority government actually turned out to last all the entire 5 years. So from 1999 till 2004, you had the government of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and a lot of major steps were taken in this particular period, which are the kind of the legacy of BJP. And the growth rate that we had achieved in 2003 till 2008 was perhaps be linked to the progress that was made by Atal Bihari Vajpayee. For example, the FRBM laws, the VAT laws. So although a lot of things were introduced in the UPA government, but the inception of it was actually laid in the BJP government. So, BJP government carried forward the progress of economic reforms, liberalization of trade, finance, foreign investment, privatization of loss-making public enterprises. You had reforms in the stock markets through DMAT. So, a lot of these activities were done, with one blot being that of the riots of Gujarat. However, in 2004, when elections were held, what had happened was, just before the election the prices of onion increased. तो क्या हुआ था कि just before the election, actually elections announce हो चुके थे, और उस period में प्याज के prices जो हैं वो बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ गए. So and the slogan that was given by BJP for its election was India Shining. तो उस टाइम पे बहुत क्रिटिसिज्म हुआ उनके इंडिया शाइनिंग के इसका. एंड बिकॉज ऑफ द increases in prices of onion, their government actually fell. So for a very small reason, so to say, the government of Atal Bihari Vajpayee fell, and who came to power was Congress, along with support, outside support of the Communist Party, which led to the formation of UPA 1, United Progressive Alliance 1. So United Progressive Alliance 1 is basically from 2004 to 2009, and from 2009 till 2014 is United Progressive Alliance 2. So the growth of Indian economy in UPA 1 was exceptional. Again, as I told you, that this is also the period which is also called as the golden period of the Indian economy. So please write it down that this is the golden phase. Golden phase. I will come to this term again and again, not only in this semester but also in the next semester. So 2003 till 2008 is called as the golden phase in the Indian economy, because all the metrics that you pick up, in all of those metrics, Indian economy was actually doing well. So be it investment, be it saving, be it current account deficit, be it inflation. Inflation was little high at the same point of time. The growth rate in this period was 8.5%. So 8.5% was the growth rate between 2003 and 2010. However, this is extended to 2010 because there was a blip in the growth in 2008-2009 because of the global financial crisis. So although UPA cannot take much credit, since there was not much supply side reform during this tenure. So what are the supply side reforms? On the agrarian front, not major reforms were done. On the front of labor market, not reforms, not many reforms were done. One of the major reforms that was achieved in this period was that of VAT taxation. Then apart from that, if you talk about credit market, again no major reform was done. In terms of reforms, the reforms that were done was not on the supply side, and the overall character of the growth that we witnessed in this period was majorly on the demand side. Then if you see what happened in the year 2008-2009, was that because of the US subprime crisis, actually our growth rate, which was in 2007-2008, our growth rate was 9.6%. In 2008-2009, our growth rate reduced to 6.4%. So this was because of the crisis that happened in US, and then the domino effect of the US financial crisis on Europe, and then on India. So that led to a moderation of our growth. But then, because of the moderation of the growth, what we had resorted was to something called as Mukherjee stimulus. So Pranab Mukherjee was the finance minister then, and to basically counter the poor growth rate or the fall in growth rate, Pranab Mukherjee introduced fiscal reforms, and monetary reforms were introduced by D. Subbarao. D. Subbarao was the RBI governor at that particular point of time. So you had a fiscal and monetary expansion in this particular period. So because of the fiscal and monetary expansion, what had happened was that the growth rate actually increased from 6.4 to again 8.5% in the years of 2009 till 2011. So that again, these 2 years, 2009, 2010, 2011, again we kind of were able to revive the growth rate. After which, so what I had mentioned, 6.7, so make it 6.7, 2008, 2009, but again rebounded to more than 8% for the next 3 years. However, what had happened was that this growth rate was again not sustainable. This was basically because आपने एक फिस्कल पॉलिसी बना दी है एक्सपेंशनिस्ट, आपने मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी बना दी है एक्सपेंशनिस्ट, एंड जिसकी वजह से देयर इज सफिशिएंट लिक्विडिटी इन द मार्केट. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, if you see the period between 2003 to 2011, इस पूरे पीरियड के अंदर जो ग्रोथ रेट है उसमें बहुत सारी कंपनी स्पेशली कॉर्पोरेट्स ने बहुत ज़्यादा लेवरेज किया अपने आप को. What do we mean by that? We basically mean that because interest rates, global interest rates were very low, एंड ग्लोबल इंटरेस्ट रेट्स लो थे, इसलिए इंडिया के इंटरेस्ट रेट्स लो थे. प्लस आपने 8-9 के अंदर बहुत सारे फिजिकल रिफॉर्म्स करे, आपने और इंटरेस्ट रेट्स नीचे गिरा दिए, मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी भी आपकी एक्सपेंशनिस्ट हो गई. तो सारे के सारे कॉर्पोरेट्स बहुत ज़्यादा लोन लिए जा रहे थे टू एन एक्सटेंट दैट दोज लोन्स वर अनसस्टेनेबल, बिकॉज आप जिस रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पे आप पैसा बोरो कर रहे हो वो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट सेम नहीं रहेगा, फ्लोटिंग रहेगा. प्लस आप अज्यूम कर रहे हो कि इकोनॉमी इतनी तेज़ी से ही ग्रो करेगी. सो फॉर एग्जांपल पीपल हु आर लिविंग इन नोएडा वो वुड सी कि जेपी के पास बहुत सारा लैंड पड़ा हुआ है, बहुत सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं बट वो अनकम्प्लीटेड है. ऐसे ही रियल इस्टेट में बहुत सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स जो थे वो शुरू हुए बट वो कंप्लीट नहीं हुए. चाहे वो आम्रपाली हो जाए, चाहे वो सुपरटेक हो जाए. तो ये सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स कैसे थे? क्योंकि यहाँ पर उनके जो प्रमोटर्स थे उन्होंने बहुत सस्ते रेट पे लोन ले लिया, but at the same point of time जब इकोनॉमी में स्लो डाउन आया, when economy tanked after 2011, they were not able to repay those loans. So ये इस पीरियड में कॉर्पोरेट लेवरेजिंग जो थी, कॉर्पोरेट लोन्स जो थे वो बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़े. और क्योंकि कॉर्पोरेट लोन्स बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़े एंड 2011 के बाद आरबीआई ने रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया क्योंकि इन्फ्लेशन बहुत हो गया था हमारे इकोनॉमी, प्लस इकोनॉमी में स्लो डाउन आना शुरू हो गया था. These corporates were not able to pay back those loans, which ultimately led to the NPA problem. इसको I'll later tell you that what is called as twin balance sheet syndrome, TBS. Twin balance sheets में twin balance sheet क्या है? Basically balance sheets of banks, क्योंकि उनके assets खराब हो रहे हैं NPA, और बैलेंस शीट्स ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट्स क्योंकि वो लोन नहीं ले पाएंगे अगर वो लोन पिछला लोन चुकाएंगे नहीं. So that is called as twin balance sheet syndrome. So that all of this led to the ultimate crisis, like a situation between 2011 till 2013, and it is only in 2013 के mid में when certain measures were taken in the banking sector, when Raghuram Rajan was given the post of governor. He introduced something called AQR, asset quality review, and plus certain measures were taken by him, and then in 2014 after the coming of the Modi government, the NDA one, things were stabilized because on external sector as well oil prices गिर गए थे, benign हो गया था market, and we picked up our growth again. So ये पूरा phase रहा है इसमें यहाँ तक. Inflation, if you see inflation in this particular period from 2011 till 2013 was pretty high, was around 7-8%. And apart from that you had growth slowdown, you had corruption scandals. This period में there was something called policy paralysis as well. There's something called policy paralysis. So the UPA 2, especially in the end, was marred by a lot of crisis. आपका कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स का क्राइसिस आया. You had the crisis of Colgate, you had the crisis of there was another crisis that I'm probably forgetting here. So all of which basically the 2G, yes, the 2G crisis. So there were a lot of corruption scandals which actually hurt the image of the Indian economy as well, and the entire government machinery was only kind of firefighting these scandals rather than focusing on growth. So that led to the public actually demanding a clean, strong and coherent leadership which was provided by the candidature of Narendra Modi, especially the model that he had implemented in Gujarat. So that led to an overwhelming majority that he gained. BJP by itself came to power, but alongside with its partners it had a huge majority. However, that majority was only in Lok Sabha, not in Rajya Sabha. If you want, you can read how members in Rajya Sabha are elected. So read about that. Now at this moment, BJP has a majority in both houses. So there were certain measures which BJP could not have taken in NDA 1 will now be taken. For example, if you see It's only after NDA 2 that major steps are being taken, because now BJP and NDA do not need to take on board the opposition parties for bills to be passed in the in Rajya Sabha. Now, uh, so if we compare, if we see the partial reform process of since 80s, that left turn I had already explained to you. I have already explained to you the IMF strategy. Um, please see here, I have mentioned, please read Washington Consensus. Then the thrust of the reforms, the thrust of the 1991 reforms were based on trade, industry, finance, increasing market orientation, abolishment of tariffs, uh, and scrapping of licensing. So all of these measures were taken. Then I had obviously mentioned to you about the fast economic growth of 8.5%. I told you that this was because this was not purely because of the policies of Manmohan Singh government. It was also because of the strong tailwind from the world economy. Overall, the world economy was doing very well. There was loose monetary policies across the world, which actually brought a lot of money, offshore money, to the Indian stock market and the Indian market, and the prices of oil were low. There were good harvests. So all of this, a lot of supply side factors came into being, which led to a very fast growth rate. However, this bubble burst, and the proximate cause of this bubble burst was corporate investment. I told you that ये जितने भी कॉर्पोरेट्स थे, इन्होंने बहुत ज़्यादा लोन ले रखे थे, और उनकी वजह से इनकी बैलेंस शीट अनसस्टेनेबल हो गई थी. एंड डोमेस्टिक फैक्टर्स, फॉरेन फैक्टर्स तो जो थे, यूरोजोन क्राइसिस चल रहा था, ब्रेग्जिट की बात हो रही थी, US सब प्राइम क्राइसिस, तो वो तो एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स थे ही. बट इंटरनल फैक्टर्स की वजह से भी, करप्शन क्राइसिस और ये सारी क्राइसिस की वजह से, एंड द ह्यूज लोन्स दैट द कॉर्पोरेट्स हैड टेकन, उन सब की वजह से भी क्राइसिस इंडियन इकोनॉमी में आया. एंड द कॉन्सिक्वेंस वाज दैट द कॉर्पोरेट्स हैड टू डी लेवरेज. बेसिकली लोन कम करना था उनको आफ्टर ओवर बोरोइंग फॉर बूम ईयर्स. ठीक है. And I'd already told you about the governance crisis and the major scandals, and which led to policy paralysis. Then inflation, I told you, was around 10% from 2008. Your savings, and because inflation, जब आप inflation ज़्यादा होता है तो लोग सेव अकाउंट्स में नहीं करते, क्योंकि मेरे पास नेगेटिव रिटर्न आ जाएगा. फॉर एग्जांपल, मेरा इन्फ्लेशन अगर 10% का है और मेरा रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट जो है बैंक का वो मुझे 7% दे रहा है, एवरी ईयर आई एम लूजिंग 3%. सो इस 3% को लूज़ करने के बजाय व्हाट पीपल डू इज़ डायरेक्ट देयर फाइनेंशियल सेविंग्स इनटू गोल्ड या रियल एस्टेट. तो इसीलिए जो है हाउस होल्ड सेविंग्स जो है वो डाइवर्टेड टू गोल्ड, एंड करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट फिर से बढ़ गया 2011 में, और वो 2013 तक बढ़ता रहा, जब तक रघुराम राजन टुक स्टेप्स टू रिड्यूस दैट फिस्कल डेफिसिट, योर करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट. Then let's talk about the poverty, deprivation and inequality. As we had mentioned in the previous, that till 1990s there was not much change, especially till 1997. ये जो आपका unemployment, ये जो आपका poverty rate है वो 50% प्लस ही रहता है. ओनली इन 80s जब आप मेजर कुछ स्टेप्स लेना शुरू करते हो, आपका ये पावर्टी रेशो जो है वो गिरना शुरू होता है. बट अगेन, इफ़ यू सी दी मॉडर्न अप्रोच, जो हम तेंदुलकर रिपोर्ट जो हम मानते हैं, वो भी 45% बताता है 1993 में, बट अब जाके वो बताता है 22%, जो अभी भी एक्सेप्टेबल जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया लेके चलती है. सो दिस मेजर फॉल जो आता है, that is only after the neoliberal reforms. But when you talk about Tendulkar's definition of poverty, we are talking about extreme poverty. Rangarajan actually introduced a new, उन्होंने थोड़ा सा definition को widen up किया, और उन्होंने जब 2011 की figures देखी तो वो 29 या 30% जो है वो figure है. At the same point of time, if you see inequality in India is basically seen on the basis of income inequality, consumption inequality, कि कौन कितना कंज्यूम कर रहा है. टॉप 5% की पॉपुलेशन क्या कंज्यूम कर रही है, और कितने पैसे खर्च कर रही है कंजम्पशन पे, और जो सबसे लोवेस्ट है वो कितना पैसे खर्च कर रही है. उसके बेसिस पे हम इनइक्वालिटी देखते हैं. हाउएवर, जो इनइक्वालिटी देखने का बेस्ट तरीका है वो इनकम इनक्वालिटी देखने का है, बट हम कंजम्पशन इनक्वालिटी के बेसिस के ऊपर इनकम इनक्वालिटी के ऊपर कमेंट करते हैं, विच इज़ नॉट एक्चुअली परफेक्ट, बिकॉज मेजरली जो टॉप परसेंटाइल्स टॉप जो डिसाइल्स हैं वो अपनी कंजम्पशन को हाइड करते हैं. कॉन्स्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन होती है, कुछ इलीगल कंजम्पशन होती है, वो सारी कंजम्पशन को हाइड करते हैं. तो इसीलिए दिस इज़ नॉट अ गुड मेजर. बट अगर ये मेजर भी लो तो हम देखते हैं कि 1993 तक आपकी इनक्वालिटी गिरी है, बट 1993 के बाद आपकी इनक्वालिटी बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ी है. अ गुड मेजर ऑफ इनक्वालिटी वुड बी समथिंग लाइक टैक्स रिकॉर्ड्स कर सकते हो या इनकम रिकॉर्ड्स से बेसिस पे कर सकते हो. एंड देयर हैव बीन सर्टन मेजर्स विच शो दैट इनक्वालिटी हैज़ एक्चुअली इंक्रीज बाय ह्यूज मार्जिन आफ्टर 1993. In fact, there is a paper by Stiglitz and Lucas Shanchel, which I have mentioned earlier as well. India from British to billionaire Raj. India from British Raj to billionaire Raj from 1922 till 2014. ये एक पेपर है. I'll send you the link of that paper. It basically talks about that इंडिया के जो टॉप 1% की जो पॉपुलेशन है, इसके पास इंडिया की 22% के रिसोर्सेज हैं और 99% लोगों के पास फिर बचा हुआ 78% है. तो दैट शोज द इनइक्वालिटी इन द कंट्री. और ये दिस इज़ द एक्सटेंट ऑफ इनइक्वालिटी, और ये इंक्रीज़ होती गई है. सो तेंदुलकर रिपोर्ट 2009 एंड रंगराजन रिपोर्ट 2014, एंड जो प्रीवियस डेफिनेशंस हैं उस तक 55% तक ही आपकी पॉवर्टी थी, बट सुपर फास्ट ग्रोथ रेट के बाद ये पॉवर्टी रिड्यूस हुई है. ठीक है, ये पूरा मेंशन्ड है यहाँ पर. हाउएवर व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट deprivation is a concept which is very different from poverty. Deprivation के terms में you talk about education deprivation. This deprivation is basically taken up from the concept of Amartya Sen. सो ये जो कई तरीके की डेप्रीवेशन जो हैं वो फ्रीडम्स को कर्टेल करती हैं. सो डेप्रीवेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ हेल्थ, डेप्रीवेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ एजुकेशन, डेप्रीवेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन, ये सारी डेप्रीवेशंस जो हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट करती हैं एट द सोसाइटल लेवल. एंड इफ वी सी आवर रैंकिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ दीज डेप्रीवेशंस, वी आर वे बिहाइंड. इन फैक्ट इफ यू सी India's numbers at global hunger index, global malnutrition index, the education index, like ACER report और like PISA report, तो ये सारे के सारे दिखाते हैं कि इंडिया हेल्थ, एजुकेशन एंड ये बेसिक एम्पावरमेंट, जेंडर एम्पावरमेंट, इन सब पे बहुत पीछे लाई कर रहा है. सो डेप्रीवेशन इज़ नॉट इंटायरली कैप्चर्ड बाय इनकम पॉवर्टी. एंड इंडिया के ये जो डेप्रीवेशन के स्टेटिस्टिक्स हैं ये एक्चुअली में सब सहारन अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज़ जैसे हैं. तो चाइना तो भूल ही जाओ, श्रीलंका, बांग्लादेश, नेपाल, ये सारी कंट्रीज़ भी हमसे अच्छे हैं व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट डेप्रीवेशन के स्टैटिस्टिक्स के बारे में बात करते हैं. सो विच इज़ अनबिकमिंग ऑफ अ कंट्री विच वर्ल्ड बैंक रैंक्स एज लो मिडिल इनकम कंट्री. तो हम मेजर इकोनॉमिक पावर बनने की बात करते हैं, बट एट द सेम पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट आवर डेप्रीवेशंस, these are much poorer. So in terms of child malnutrition, immunization, lack of sanitation facilities, in terms of literacy, हमारा सिर्फ 80% है, चाइना का देखो 99% है. इन टर्म्स ऑफ चिल्ड्रन ड्रॉप आउट, हमारा ड्रॉप आउट रेशो बहुत ज़्यादा है. ग्रॉस एनरोलमेंट रेशो सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन में हमारा बहुत कम है, हमारा 63% है एज़ कम्पेयर टू चाइना का 81% है. एंड दैट्स नॉट जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट क्वालिटी. व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट क्वालिटी तो आप एसर रिपोर्ट को देखिए, एनुअल सर्वे ऑफ एजुकेशन रिपोर्ट. ये प्रथम एक NGO है वो निकालती है. दिस इज़ इन कोऑर्डिनेशन विद अमर्त्य सेन्स contribution at Pratham. And apart from that there is another report called PISA. So ये दोनों बताते हैं कि इंडियन स्कूल एजुकेशन एंड द क्वालिटी ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स दैट इंडिया प्रोड्यूसेस at least at the school level is not sufficient as compared to the rest of the world. And inequality ka I have already told you that there is a matter of rising inequality in the country, and the inequality that we capture is basically inequality per capita consumption expenditure, which is a surrogate for income inequality in income, but इसमें under reporting होती है, and measured by consumption inequality basically underestimates income inequality. और जो बाकी मेजर्स हैं जो लोगों ने निकाले हैं उसके हिसाब से जो गिनी कोएफिशिएंट आ रहा है वो 50% प्लस है. गिनी कोएफिशिएंट की रेंज जो होती है वो 0 से लेकर 100 तक होती है. जितना आप ज़ीरो पे जाओगे जितना उतना आप इक्वालिटी की तरफ जाओगे. ज़ीरो मीन्स परफेक्ट इक्वल कंट्री इक्वालिटी एंड दिस मीन्स परफेक्ट इनइक्वालिटी. तो जितना आप 50 की तरफ जाओगे उतना आपकी इकोनॉमी आपकी सोसाइटी में इनइक्वालिटी ज़्यादा है. जितना आप ज़ीरो की तरफ जाओगे उतना इनइक्वालिटी कम है. तो हमारा जो मेजर आ रहा है वो ऑफिशियल मेजर के हिसाब से 36% है, बट कई लोगों ने वो 50% प्लस भी दिखाया कि इंडिया के केस में है. And not just that, this inequality is actually increasing. Per capita consumption inequality has increased as compared to rural inequality. And within urban areas, हमारे urban areas में भी inequality और ज़्यादा बढ़ गई है. तो urban और rural के बीच में तो जो बड़ी है. दूसरी inequality बड़ी है between the urban areas, जो top decile versus the other deciles. प्लस टैक्स डेटा जब हम देखते हैं तो टैक्स डेटा के बेसिस पे भी हम देखते हैं कि टॉप 1% जो इनकम अर्नर्स हैं उनकी टोटल इनकम इंक्रीज फ्रॉम 5% टू 10% फ्रॉम 1990s टिल 2002, और आज की डेट में वो 22% हो गई है अकॉर्डिंग टू द पेपर दैट हैड मेंशन. So this is the overall review of 80s to till 2014. तो ये हमारा पूरा का पूरा रीडिंग हो गया. ठीक है. I will send you this reading. I have already marked the entire reading. I'll remove all the comments here. This has already been highlighted, and then I will send it along with the class notes, the PPT that we have made. ये जो एक पेज है इसको बना डाल दूंगा. एंड कुछ और रिसोर्सेज इफ आई फाइंड आई विल प्रॉब्ली पुट इन दिस PDF. और ट्विन बैलेंस शीट सिंड्रोम देखो. ट्विन बैलेंस शीट सिंड्रोम क्या है कि फ्रॉम 2003 टिल 2011 वर्ल्ड का जो फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम था, स्पेशली टिल 2007-2008 तक, वर्ल्ड में एक्सेस लिक्विडिटी थी. और वो एक्सेस लिक्विडिटी किस फॉर्म में थी कि जितने भी ये डेवलप कंट्रीज़ थे ये अल्ट्रा लूज मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी रख रहे थे. दैट मीन्स उनके यहाँ पर जो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स था बहुत कम था. इंडिया में रिलेटिवली क्योंकि डेवलपिंग इकोनॉमी है इंटरेस्ट रेट्स ज़्यादा थे. तो जितने भी फंड मैनेजर्स और इंडिया की इकॉनमी अच्छा भी कर रही थी, तो जितने भी फंड मैनेजर्स वगैरह होते थे वो सारे ये देख रहे थे कि इंडिया में रेट ऑफ रिटर्न जो है ज़्यादा है, तो बहुत सारा पैसा इंडियन इकॉनमी की तरफ आ रहा था. प्लस इंडियन इकॉनमी भी सेविंग इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ा रहा था. बहुत सारे लोन्स हम दे रहे थे. एंड 2008 के बाद जब से मुखर्जी स्टिमुलस आया, जब हमने फिस्कल रिफॉर्म्स करे, जब हमने फिस्कल एक्सपेंशन किया, टैक्सेशन कम कर दिया, और RBI ने मॉनेटरी एक्सपेंशन किया, रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट और कम कर दिया, तो और ज़्यादा लोन लोगों को बंटने लग गए. तो इस पूरे पीरियड के अंदर बहुत सारे लोगों ने बहुत ज़्यादा लोन लिए, स्पेशली कॉर्पोरेट्स ने. और इन एरियाज़ में लोन लिए. किस एरियाज़ में? रियल एस्टेट में, रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन में, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में, पावर में. अनिल अंबानी ने बहुत ज़्यादा लोन लिए थे इस पीरियड के अंदर. एयरलाइन इंडस्ट्री में जो विजय माल्या वाला सारा लोन है वो सारा इस पीरियड में है. JP ने पूरा का पूरा लोन इस पीरियड में लिया. तो बहुत सारे लोगों ने बहुत सारा लोन ले लिया, अपनी बैलेंस शीट में लोन भर लिए, ऑन दी अजम्पशन कि इंडियन इकोनॉमी भी तेज़ चलती रहेगी, ऑन दी अजम्पशन कि इंटरेस्ट रेट भी नीचे रहेगा. एंड जो दे समथिंग कॉल्ड नेट प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ योर प्रोजेक्ट. जब भी आप कोई प्रोजेक्ट देखते हो, बनाते हो या इंट्रोड्यूस करते हो, तो आप देखते हो कि मेरा NPV क्या है, मुझे रिटर्न क्या मिलेगा. बट वो बेस्ड होता है एक रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पे. वो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट अगर इंक्रीज़ हो गया तो आपका जो प्रोजेक्ट है वो अनवाइबल हो जाएगा. 2011 के बाद RBI ने रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट तेज़ी से बढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया था. क्यों बढ़ाया? क्योंकि कंट्री के अंदर इन्फ्लेशन बहुत तेज़ी से हो रहा था. तो सुब्बा राव ने बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ा दिए, इसीलिए बहुत सारे ये प्रोजेक्ट्स जो थे वो जो ऑलरेडी शुरू हो चुके थे ये टेक ऑफ नहीं कर पाए. लोग अपना लोन लिया हुआ पैसा वापस नहीं चुका पा रहे थे. एंड बहुत सारे बैंक्स ने क्या किया, एवरग्रीनिंग ऑफ लोन्स कर दिए कि चलो आप नहीं दे पा रहे हो, कोई बात नहीं, हम एक्सटेंड कर देते हैं आपका लोन. तो एक्चुअल जो रियल प्रॉब्लम थी बैंक्स के जो क्या कहते हैं बैलेंस शीट में, वो भी नहीं दिखाई दे रही थी. क्यों? क्योंकि बैंक्स इनको लोन अगर लोन वापस नहीं कर पा रहे, इंटरेस्ट वापस नहीं कर पा रहे, तो और लोन दे देते थे कि मेरा जो है बैंक के बैलेंस शीट में ये ना दिखाई दे कि वो NPA बन गया है, वो एसेट जो है नॉन परफॉर्मिंग बन गया है. दिस इज़ कॉल्ड एवरग्रीनिंग ऑफ लोन्स. तो ये सारी चीज़ें स्पेशली पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स में सब कुछ होता होता रहता था, क्योंकि पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स में पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर और ये सारी चीज़ें बहुत ज़्यादा होती हैं एज़ कम्पेयर टू प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स। तो इसकी वजह से 2013 में जब रघुराम राजन केम टू पावर एज द गवर्नर, ही रिकग्नाइज कि ये जो प्रैक्टिस बैंक इंडियन बैंकर्स कर रहे हैं अनसस्टेनेबल, एंड ही कॉल्ड फॉर समथिंग कॉल्ड एज एसेट क्वालिटी रिव्यू, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि आप सारे के सारे बैंक देखो कि आपका ट्रू लेवल ऑफ एनपीए कितना है। और तब जाके हमें पता चला कि बैंक्स के पास तो बहुत ज़्यादा एनपीए है, नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट। नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट क्या होता है? अगर कोई भी मेरे लोन का इंटरेस्ट जो है 90 दिन तक नहीं देता है तो वो एनपीए बोल जाता है। अगर मेरा लोन सर्विस नहीं हो रहा 90 डेज तक तो वो एनपीए कहलाएगा। तो बैंक्स को रियलाइज़ हुआ कि हमारा एनपीए बहुत ज़्यादा है, और तो बैंक के लिए एसेट था, लोन जब बैंक देता है तो वो उसके एसेट साइड पे आता है, तो उसके एसेट्स नॉन परफॉर्मिंग हो गए हैं, तो उसकी बैलेंस शीट ख़राब हो गई। और कॉर्पोरेट्स जो हैं, कॉर्पोरेट्स क्योंकि लोन वापस नहीं कर पा रहे इसलिए वो फ्रेश लोन नहीं ले पाएंगे, तो उनकी बैलेंस शीट ख़राब हो रही है। और स्पेशली वो कॉर्पोरेट्स जो जिन्होंने कुछ किया भी नहीं है बट क्योंकि बैंक्स ऑलरेडी परेशान हैं लोन से, वो उनको भी लोन नहीं दे रहे हैं। तो इसको बोलते हैं ट्विन बैलेंस शीट, बैलेंस शीट्स ऑफ बैंक्स बीइंग बैड एंड द बैलेंस शीट ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट्स बीइंग बैड, and that led to a poor kind of a scenario for investment. तो बैंक्स ने पैसा देना कम कर दिया, क्रेडिट क्रिएशन कम हो गया, और क्योंकि क्रेडिट क्रिएशन कम हो गया इसीलिए ये जितने भी कॉर्पोरेट्स थे अब ये एनबीएफसी के पास जाने लग गए। आईएलएनएफएस जो तुमने सुना होगा, इन सब से एनबीएफसीज, नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन से, कॉर्पोरेशन से पैसा रेज करने लगे। बट जब आईएलएनएफएस का क्राइसिस हुआ 2019 के अंदर, तो वहाँ से भी पैसा ख़त्म होना शुरू हो गया। तो ये पूरा जो क्राइसिस है ये इस तरीके से मैनिफेस्ट किया।